Hello, 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 it is Ihlamur and welcome back to another Focus On video for the Pioneers of Pagonia. Today we are focusing on the forester, and you can see the foresters here. They plant trees and you can see them waving at us, which is lovely, isn't it? Hello guys, we shall call them the Freds the foresters. If you want more Freds, if you don't have enough, then you need to get them some shovels from the tool shop, and they will be automatically recruited when needed from the guild hall. So that's how you get more Freds. Let's talk about building some extra forester buildings, shall we? Well, it's important to know what you can build them on. You can build this building on most terrain types: grass, dusty, sandy, mossy, lakeside, woodland, fertile, beach, steppe and stony desert are all available to you. The only ones really you can't build on are rocky, the cliff face, water of course, the marshland, the bit that's really watery, mountain, stone and scree, so those are unavailable. Once you do select a site, it's a 4x4 building, it's a 2x2 building, so it takes up 4 spots, and therefore it can take up to 4 diggers. Once the builders arrive, they ask for 4 softwood trunks, and it will take 1 builder 82 seconds or 2 builders 41 seconds running at normal speed to build the building. Of course, we're running a little bit faster on this one, got it on the 5 times speed, so sing it in fast mode. It's obviously best to build your building as close to the center of a large piece of land that you can plant trees on as possible, but note that you can build the building on land that you can't plant on, and maybe that would be a better strategy so you don't waste any valuable planting space. Once your building has been built, 3 workers will come along, your Freds, and they will start working as soon as water is available. If water isn't available, then they will not plant the trees. As you can see here, the water doesn't actually have to be at the building yet, but it does have to be on its way. Now there are various jobs or orders that you can give to these guys, and it comes down to 3 things: planting hardwood trees, planting softwood trees, and collecting firewood. It is important to note that if there is any place where they can plant trees or that they can water trees, they'll do that and they won't collect firewood. They'll only collect firewood when there's nothing else to do. As far as I can tell, there's 3 variations on how they work. The first variation, they leave their house, they go and they plant a tree and they come back to the house. The second variation, if there are trees that require saplings that require water, they'll go out with a water bucket, they'll water the tree, and then they'll go and they'll plant another tree, as long as there's room and as long as there's going to be water available for it. And the third variation is they'll just go collect a bucket of water, they'll water the plant, and then they'll go back to the forester building. So 3 variations, and that means it's quite hard to understand exactly how long it takes them to do their job, because they can do different things. But what I did was I took a look over a long period, over an hour, of how they were working, and I averaged out the time. Now, they start off much quicker because they're only traveling a short distance to their saplings to do the planting, and as time goes on, as they have to go further away from their building, it takes longer, but the average amount of time that I found was 95 seconds per journey per forester. So that's 3 seconds to collect water if they are collecting water, another 3 seconds to distribute the water if they're doing that, 13 seconds to actually plant a sapling. 13 seconds is quite a long time, and the rest, over a minute, actually just walking around in between those different stages. So quite a lot of walking time, brings it to 95 seconds, or just over a minute and a half. And if you divide that by 3, which is 31.666 recurring, because you've got 3 foresters, that's really how many buckets of water you need to keep planting saplings. Now obviously there are some places where they can't plant, and there are lots of different terrain options, so sometimes it's going to be much higher or much lower than that number, so it will depend where you plant. But if you've got a good reasonable terrain, then I think about a minute and a half is about right. But there are terrains that you can build on, and there are terrains that are better. So the best places to plant trees or saplings: grassland, woodland, so where there are already trees, and fertile land. Those are the best places. If you plant the trees there and give them water, then those trees are going to grow and you're going to get wood out of them. You can plant on dusty ground, sandy ground, mossy ground. You can even plant in the middle of a marsh, which is interesting, right in the water. But if you plant on these types, you'll see that it's very poor. And so what does that mean? It means that when the sapling, even if it gets water, when the sapling reaches the first stage of growth, it's got a 1 in 4 chance, 25% chance of actually growing. 75% of the time, the tree will wither, based on my observations. So it's much, much more efficient to have your foresters planting on the grassland, the woodland, or the fertile terrain types. Also interesting to note that withered trees will disappear after about 1 minute, and then the forester can try and replant. So eventually you will be able to forest dusty ground, for example. However, the ground underneath will never change to forest or woodland terrain. It will stay as dusty. As mentioned, the forester will only gather firewood if there's nothing else to plant, and once that happens, he can collect up to 16 firewood and keep it in his building. He will also keep 16 buckets of water available if he can. Now let's look a little bit of math. As we remember, the well worker can produce a bucket of water every 27 seconds. The forester, on the other hand, will need water on average about every 31 seconds. So one well worker can keep a forester in water forever. It actually loses a little bit of time at the beginning, so you do need a small stockpile of well water right at the beginning if you don't want to lose any trees. But once the initial kind of planting has happened and he has to travel a little bit further, then the well worker can easily keep up with the forester. So according to my observations and my calculations, the well worker will produce about 133 buckets of water over the course of an hour. A forester will use 114, meaning that there's a surplus of 19 buckets of water over the course of an hour. Once we understand exactly how other buildings that use water and the woodcutter works, then we'll be able to figure out exactly how many well workers we need per forester. But at this point, 1 for 1 is probably fine. The other thing we should look at, of course, are the trees. Now, trees, softwood or hardwood, they grow in the same way. They grow on the same ground. There's really no difference. A little quirk is in the animation. So when the forester pulls out the tree or stops to plant the tree appears and then immediately disappears and then reappears. Very odd, a little quirk there. The other thing is that it's a standard tree that looks like a cross between a softwood and a hardwood, and then when the forest actually plants it, it makes the decision as to whether it is hardwood or softwood, and you don't know until then. As I mentioned, it takes the forester 13 seconds to plant the tree. After that 13 seconds has passed, the tree will start growing, and it takes 4 minutes and 4 seconds, or about 244 seconds, for the first stage of growth to happen. And after that stage of growth, as long as the tree has received water, and as long as it's on the best terrain type, then it will actually grow. It will turn the ground under it into woodland, as long as it is the grassland or fertile types. And the other thing that happens is that you can then, when you cut it down, you get 1 wood out of it. Let's talk a little bit about water. At 20% of the growth of the sapling, it starts to need water, and that's where, if the forester has a bucket of water available, he will grab the bucket and go and water the tree, as long as he has time as well. That's after about 48 seconds, 49 seconds of the sapling growth. It then has until 80% of the growth to receive that water, and if it takes longer than that, then the sapling will wither no matter what kind of terrain it's on, and that's about 195 seconds or 3 minutes 15. It needs to get the water in between those times, so in between 49 seconds and 3 minutes and 15 seconds, a forester has to water the sapling, otherwise it will wither. Now, it's really interesting that the first stage of growth only takes 244 seconds, or in fact in total 258 seconds with the planting as well. It's interesting because the second stage of growth, to get to 2 wood, takes 6 minutes and 3 seconds, or 363 seconds. And that means that it's actually more efficient to plant a new tree than it is to wait for a tree to grow from the first to the second stage. And the second to the third stage is the same, about 6 minutes to 3 seconds, 363 seconds. So that again is less efficient than just going and planting a new tree. So as you can see from this chart, I've modeled how long it would take you to collect 100 wood, or to have 100 wood available anyway, if you allowed the trees to grow just to stage 1 or to stage 2 or to stage 3. And if you're just allowing it to grow to stage 1 and then chopping it down, it's only going to take you about 74 minutes to get to 100 wood. Whereas if you wait for stage 2, it's going to take 88 minutes. And if you wait for stage 3, it's going to take 92 minutes. So there is an option with the woodcutter to allow them to chop down younger trees, and that seems to be the more efficient way of collecting wood. Now that chart, of course, is based on planting on fertile or woodland or grassland. It's much slower on poor terrain. Now the hardwood and softwood trees, they can be planted quite close to buildings. In fact, I'm showing you here the kind of radius around them where they can be planted next to buildings, but next to roads they can get much closer, and this is so that roads can actually cut between the trees. Almost always, it should always be possible for a road to get between the trees in the forest because of these radius between buildings and also other trees that's much wider. So that's important. The last thing to mention, of course, is why we need a forester at all, apart from to make the terrain look nice with lots of trees. Well, of course, both types of tree, hardwood and softwood, are collected by woodcutters who will then turn that into logs and into wood. But if the forester can also collect firewood, well, then the baker and the provisioner also use that in order to cook food. So the forester can be quite a useful chap. As usual, I've produced an infographic, a card for the forester that you can use to reference. Very happy for you to use this. If you see anything wrong, let me know and I'll update it. And of course, the game may change. This is early access, so I'll be watching the updates with interest. But hopefully, this allows you to be much more efficient. It allows you to understand the game better, and it allows you to enjoy the game more. I hope you have a lovely day. Enjoy this infographic, enjoy this game. Bye bye.